Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and Tim. I've got Tim with me, as always. We're a duo in this thing. We've been doing this for over 6 months now, over 50 episodes. And so the interesting thing about this week was obviously South Africa winning that test match yesterday morning in dramatic, or not necessarily dramatic fashion, but it was dramatic because we had such a bad first test. And then they came back and bounced back like the coach. Who's the guy who's their coach right now, Mark Boucher, that whole bounce back ability, that whole gritty thing coming through. And we'll talk about that. But before you do that, please do subscribe to our channel. We've got a Patreon account right now, so please do go to patreon.com/oneworld there. So to just give us a little bit of support. We want to be in the stadiums doing commentary. We want to be doing this on a much more full-time basis, and your contributions really do help us in getting us there. We also got some Women's World Cup coverage happening. South Africa starts with Bangladesh on Saturday morning. So please do go onto our website, onewsr.com, listen to us here on YouTube, and let's support the ladies as they try to conquer the world. They had some really not so great warm-up matches, but hopefully they will get going at the right time. They played Bangladesh on Saturday, so it's going to be quite interesting to see how they handle all the spin. Tim, today we're talking review of the test series. We've got Adam with us to kind of give us what he thought of that test series. He did call 1-1, but Tim, what are we expecting?
Yes, so we had Adam on the preview of the series, so we thought it would be a good idea to bring him back, seeing as he predicted the correct series result, and to give his opinion on where New Zealand cricket is after that rather interesting test series.
Let's bring him on. Hi, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes. So you called 1-1. Which test match did you expect New Zealand to win? Was it the first or the last?
I guess the first one, when you think about like the South African team when it hadn't come out of MIQ, and they did look really rusty in that very, very first test. Like, to be honest, I was really surprised how much the Black Caps beat South Africa in that first test. I think we all were.
Yes.
To be bowled up, was it? I can't remember, 90 odd
95
in the first
90.
innings, and then followed up with 111 in their second innings. That's uncharacteristics of South African sides who usually really fight hard, and they usually don't get beaten so comprehensively. I think that really shocked me. I thought that New Zealand would win probably the first match, but not in that style. That really came to a shock to me, to be honest.
Yeah, so Tim and I were talking beforehand, and I remember asking you the question about what you do at Hagley Oval, win the toss, bowl first. And we spoke about not having spinners in our sides. And South Africa won the second test match doing the complete opposite. It was baffling to all of us. When he won the toss, we was excited because I was like, okay, yes, ball first, it looks good. No, Dean was like, actually, we're batting first. Have you ever seen Hagley Oval play like that before? And what does that mean for New Zealand going forward? Because the way Keshav Maharaj bowled kind of gave me a sense that somebody who can bowl spin needs to be there somewhere in the top six. But I do know the whole Colin de Grandhomme and Rachin Ravindra argument was settled when Colin scored that 100. But what did you think of South Africa's tactics in that second test regarding adding the spinner and also winning the toss and batting first?
I think it was really, really brave. And I remember when I read Twitter and I saw that Dean Elgar had won a toss and he decided to bat first. I was like, oh my goodness, what is he doing here? But obviously they looked at the pitch and they knew the pitch wasn't the same kind of deck that was dished up on the first test. It wasn't as green. And it did offer some assistance early on, but he backed himself to get through that. And as you saw, as the day went on, it became easier to bat on, and the New Zealand bowlers couldn't keep the movement that they did. And through that, they were able to get that first innings advantage. It didn't really break up to suit Maharaj either. New Zealand pitchers don't tend to do that. It wasn't a Bunsen burner on day 4 and day 5, but it did offer Maharaj just enough assistance. And to be fair to Maharaj, he bowled superbly well. Wasn't, as I said, an extremely turning track, but he bowled with so much control. And he only just had to get the ball to turn enough to trouble the New Zealand batsman.
Yeah, that's a good point. He was very consistent. I think that's the what made when we were discussing. Mpho and I were discussing uh, after the first test what South Africa needed, and it needed somebody just to give 100%, be very consistent, and somebody who's never let the side down. And that's Keshav Maharaj. When he's always played, he's always given 100%. You could argue there were a few players that definitely did not do that at the first test from a South African perspective. From a New Zealand perspective, it'd be interesting to see what you thought of this. When coming into the series, obviously all the talk was about Bolt, if he was available. But when he was not available for the first test, I think I was thinking of Jamison. I was thinking that Jamison was going to have a really good an effect. Similar in the vein of Marco Janssen with the height, the bounce, ability with the bat as well to hit the ball a long way. But I was very disappointed in his performance, particularly in his bowling. It looked largely toothless throughout the series. What do you think? What are your thoughts on his performances throughout the series?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. I mean, he looked really average throughout the whole series. And as you point out, you've got another tall timber in the South African side, Marco Janssen, who completely outbowled him in the series. And he's only just a newcomer to international cricket. Jamison looked like he lost or didn't have that kind of spark during the series. I'm not sure whether it was lack of cricket or I'm not sure what it was. But I guess we also got to remember that at some point, his averages were going to normalise somewhat. Now, at one point, he was averaging, 13 in Test cricket. So I guess at some point, something had to happen in his career and for us to normalise a little bit. I mean, we saw in India, he wasn't quite at his game over there. Parts of the series in Bangladesh, he bowled well, but wasn't as dominant as what he was when he first arrived on the international scene against India. So, look, I just think it's just a bit of a learning curve for Cole Jamieson that, that you're not always going to have it your own way. You're not always going to have pitches that are green. You're not always going to have batsmen that are afraid to face you. And I think one of the advantages from a South African perspective is that they're used to playing against a bowler in the same height as Jamieson who gets similar bounce. So facing Jamieson probably wouldn't have been as challenging for them as, say, India coming up against someone like Jamieson, especially when they played a few years ago on a pitch that was similar to Hagley that was really green.
Yeah, that's actually because it was really surprising because you kind of felt like you needed someone to come and bowl and break their back and try and attack the crease as much as possible. And I understand Jamison's like 2 meters tall, and so but you kind of felt like he was bowling a very pretty ball. It's a similar characterization I had to Mark Vian Mulder, where it kind of felt like he was landing it, the ball was swinging and doing everything, but he wasn't actually trying to give you effort in it. And I'm not saying that obviously this guy is an international cricketer, so he has to give you something, but he wasn't as attacking. If you look at the way in which Kagiso and Marco bowled in that second match, where they were always just looking to try and put the batters under pressure, felt Jamieson wasn't there yet. And I think the first test kind of maybe had an influence because in that first test, obviously you saw that 7-4 from Matt Henry, and we really enjoyed watching that spell. But where would you characterize the New Zealand bowling effort as a whole throughout this test series? Because obviously you had a great time in that first test, but then also that second test wasn't as great. Where would you characterize this entire thing? Because obviously South Africa came out undercooked, but New Zealand still bowled really well.
I mean, as a whole, I'd probably give them a pass, Mark. Look, I'm obviously in the first test match, they were exceptional. Matt Henry, 7 for 23, one of the best bowling performances by a New Zealand bowler. And it was incredible to watch, especially because he came into the test series with a test bowling average of close to, I think it was around 50. So, I think he probably would have enjoyed that spell because it would have got his averages down a lot, I'm sure. But, he bowled superbly well on his home ground. And he bowled with really good pace, and he's always had the ability to move the ball. And I think for him, he would have taken a lot of confidence out of that particular innings because he's always someone that has shown a lot of promise for the Black Caps, in particular in white ball cricket, at home and domestic cricket. He's always been one of the best bowlers in four-day cricket, but he's never really exerted himself in the international game, kind of been in and out of the New Zealand side a little bit. It's only been in the last, say, 6 months or so that he's kind of had a few back-to-back test matches, and obviously without Trent Bolt being there, he's able to cement himself. Look, I think from a New Zealand perspective, like the New Zealand bowlers have always been able to bowl well on pitches that have suited them, or there's been some overhead conditions. Because I think that's another thing that people don't consider about New Zealand as well. A lot of people look at the green pitches and they think, okay, the ball's going to move around. That is correct. Obviously, the pitch is very vital to get movement off the seam, but we've also got to look into the fact that if the overhead conditions are not overcast or humid and not offering any swing, then that's also a factor. And we saw in Hangley Oval, though Dean Algar won the toss on a pitch that offered a little bit of assistance early on, the actual overhead conditions were actually sunny. So even you take into that, it's easier for the batsmen and more visible for them, easier to see. And the ball wasn't kind of moving around as much. So I think we've also got to take into account those factors as well. But I think from a New Zealand perspective, New Zealand's got to get used to bowling on pitches that don't, and in conditions that don't always suit them. And I think in the second test, what South Africa did really, really well was they really blunted the New Zealand opening attack. I think they batted extremely well. I mean, Algar and Irving in particular, they got the run rate going early on in that first session. I think at the end of the day, the South African run rate was at 2.6, 2.7, but early on, they were going at great guns. And then there was a period straight after lunch as well, and they lost Algar, but Markram and Irving again pushed it on a little bit and attacked New Zealand bowlers straight after lunch. So when New Zealand thought they might have had a little bit of an opening, they kind of pressed ahead. I think all in all, New Zealand bowled well. In the end, to restrict South Africa to 364, but I think scoring 364 always kept South Africa in the game. And I think it was, from a South African perspective, it was really important just to stay in there, especially after pretty much the game being over for the first innings in the first test.
Yeah, I'm going to break protocol here, Tim, but I was really happy.
Go ahead.
I was really happy to watch South Africa score over 350 runs in a test match. So that was I was like, oh wow, this is the first time in a while. But anyway, Tim, I'm going to ask you this from a bowling perspective. How would you characterize South Africa's effort throughout the series? Do you give them a pass mark? Because I honestly think there were some bowlers there that kind of didn't hit their straps, and it was like, I think I look at it was Kagiso, it was Marco, and maybe even Keshav in that last test that actually put their hands up. Whereas the rest, there's still a lot of questions around it.
Well, we can guarantee that when he's fit and available, Lunky will definitely be coming in. But so that's sorted. But I actually thought the Sir Pamela, for large parts, bowled well. I thought he definitely deserved that wicket in the second innings. I thought he bowled in that spell to Conway. He was really, really impressive. I think for large parts, he was really good. So I definitely would give us a pass, particularly in what we saw with the first test match. To me, there were plans in this test match. There were plans, and there was a lot more discussions between captain and bowler in this test match. There was not a lot of that in the first test match. Actually, I hardly saw that go on. But they were definitely, and the field placings were also very interesting. Didn't always work out. Conway was dropped on 6, but there was a particular 3 men on the leg side behind square for that shot. So I think all round it was a good performance for the ball.
Adam, what do you think of South Africa's bowling attack now, having seen all the guys having bowled?
I think they're up there as one of the top bowling lineups in the world when you think about depth as well. And we think Nagiti wasn't in the team. We think that Nortje was in the team. We think that Dwayne Olivier was in the team. So that's 3 quality fast bowlers there on the sidelines as well. So I think for South Africa, the challenge is going to be trying to fit all these guys into the 11. And also, I think in terms of the batting side of it, Mulder batted at number 7, but for me, he's still not quite a quality all-rounder at the moment in either facet. So that's going to be the question mark, who bats at number 7. And look, obviously Rabada for me is like one of the top 5 bowlers in the world. He might even be the best bowler, depending on what country you come from, who you support. I mean, he's definitely for me up there with Pat Cummins is the best fast bowler in the world, no doubt about it. 26 years of age. If he plays for another 10 years, he could easily go over 500 Test wickets and be maybe considered one of the greatest bowlers of all time. He's that good, and I think he really showed that in the second Test. He bowled his heart out. And the one thing I love about him is just how much energy he brings. He looked a little bit flat in the first innings, and I think we need to consider that, from a South African perspective, look, they were in a hotel for 10 days, and they come out of a hotel only a few days out, no practice matches, and then come up against a New Zealand side that was ready and hungry. So I was really disappointed with how South Africa played in the first Test. I think we need to also take into account those kind of factors as well. And then a few drop catches as well. I think Henry Nicholls was dropped early on in this spell. Wagner was. And you take those catches, and then suddenly maybe New Zealand are bowled up for 200. Maybe there's more confidence when you go into bat. And then the game kind of changes. Not saying South Africa could have won, but the complexion of that game changes. So I kind of feel as if, from a South African perspective, like the one thing that they really showed is how much talent they've got with the ball, in particular in the Test match. Sampala bowled superbly as well. I thought at times, his spell to Devon Conway probably kind of changed the game in a way. On
that
the
ball!
Exactly. Conway is all he can see on 92. Yeah, and if he bats at the time, could be a drawn Test match. So.
I was wanting Devon to score 100 that day. I was willing him on. I was like, okay, it's fine. Let's get Devon to 100, and then we'll take the 6 wickets afterwards. But Luto had other plans. I agree with you on Van Mulder, and here's my suggestion going forward for this team. I would say Marco Jansen has proven himself to be a much more handier batter and a much more of a number 7. Having seen him play against India, he scored a couple of handy 30s. Even in this last Test match, him and Keshav gave us something extra. It took us from about 280 to about 360. And I like the fact that maybe if Marco bats at 7, Keshav bats at 8, Kagiso at 9, you have a very strongish tail that has the ability to put bowling attacks under pressure that are tired, or dig in if digging needs to happen. So I think that's where it is, and I think Vian needs to go back to domestic cricket and try to sort it out, because I think we have a gem in Marco with bat and ball. The other thing for me, from a batting perspective, Adam, I looked at New Zealand. You spoke about some of the guys who need to put their hands up. There's no Kane Williamson. Henry Nicholls is in the side. Will Young's in the side. Tom Blundell's looking to make a name for himself. And largely they came through with the bat, regardless of what happened in the last Test. There were runs that were scored in the last Test. Colin de Grandhomme even scored a century. There were 3 centuries in the last Test. So it kind of gives a sense of where do you look at the guys, and obviously are the guys who put their hand up to say that maybe I want to take the Ross Taylor role because we know Kane Williamson's coming back?
How New Zealand looks in the next few tests is going to be really interesting. I would assume that Devon Conway just slips back into number 4, which means Henry Nicholls bats at number 5. I think Colin de Grandhomme's proved that he's still capable at this level. It's a great 100 that he got under all sorts of pressure. It was kind of akin to like what Chris Cairns used to bat off in New Zealand, many years ago. Colin de Grandhomme's always had the reputation of being a great hitter, but not also necessarily someone that gets runs when we need it the most, and he did it on this occasion. And I think when I look at the New Zealand batting line, it looked really thin in places, absolutely. I mean, Daryl Mitchell's a fine domestic player, and he's done well, but he's not Kane Williamson. Massive hole at the top of the order, and still... Look, Tom Latham has got a great record, but his performances against South Africa are less than desired. I mean, he's averaging, I think, 9.5 against South Africa in Test cricket, and has struggled against, really good bowling lineups, so Australia and the like as well. So he had a really poor series by his lofty standards. And then Will Young, I think, is really struggling as well. I think from memory, what New Zealand's openers combined for like 4 runs in the whole second Test. I think someone said, I read on Twitter, it's the lowest contribution by an opening partnership in the history of Test cricket.
Well, no way. Hold up. Well, I think South Africa holds that record.
Is there a team that's got 4 ducks?
4 ducks in the entire series.
So basically in the test match, so New Zealand openers in total,
Oh wow!
and over the 4 innings, scored 4 runs. That's what.
Tim, I don't think we.
That's something.
I don't.
Never trust everything you read on Twitter, maybe.
No, but like I look at like the moment where remember when Keegan Peterson started in the West Indies, Tim, where it was like he was like that. Yes, I get our opening partnership. One of them fails, the other one scores runs, and they alternate between them. So maybe that stat is true because I was like, no, but South Africa have done something similar.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, that's the thing. We always start badly, but not both of them. They don't both go out for nothing. That's the difference. That's the difference. We even it out a bit. The other thing that concerned me, particularly on the last day, when they lost 1 wicket at between beginning and lunch, I thought, well, crikey, the last 2 sessions are going to be really, really tense. You guys could definitely save it. And then, although the South African bowlers did bowl well, 4 guys got out to the short ball. The plan was the fielders were out there for the short ball, but 4 guys in a row got out in virtually exactly the same manner. And I was like, surely they know that this is a draw. They need to draw the test match. They're not going to win it.
Yeah.
I was very, very concerned. And when I was on commentary, when it was the last wicket, I was getting irate because it worked, but I was getting irate because Rabada kept bowling short, and I was going to 10 and 11, top of off. Please, somebody bowl top of off. But what did you think of that? The fact that our short plan worked.
I mean,
and the way that New Zealand played got sucked into playing short delivery, time and time again.
I thought New Zealand's approach on the final day was really baffling, to be honest. And they seemed like they just wanted to play shots. I mean, the Colin de Grandhomme one actually was, when you think about it, probably was there to be hit, and he hit it straight to the fielder who took a terrific catch. Because when you watch that in the real time, that was incredible reflexes. But yeah, you're right. I mean, look, it's a test match. Surely you just want to dig in. And we've seen examples of great players over the years that have dug in on the final day to save tests or nearly save tests. I mean, AB de Villiers and Faf du Plessis on a couple of occasions come to mind. You know, guys that just want to grit and hang in there and take the odd ball to the body. But there was none of that. You know, even Cole Jameson, when I was watching him bat, you know, I thought to myself, why can't you just take a couple on the body here? Hang in there. I felt like he was scared. The shot that he got out to, for me, kind of was a sign that he knew that he couldn't handle the short ball anymore. He wasn't prepared to take any on the body. And I think he just felt the pressure and was trying to hit out. I think he was trying to hit. He was trying to play those shots to basically stop the bowlers from bowling that delivery because he couldn't handle it. And I think Southee was a little bit the same. He took a couple early on, and then at the end of it, he was like, well, I can't handle this anymore, and head out. And I think it was just utter pressure. I guess it's a little bit different than a top order batsman like a Pujara or de Villiers or a Faf du Plessis taking balls to the body and being able to handle it. I guess when you're batting it that down the lower order, obviously it's a lot harder, and the pressure got to the guys, and I think they just didn't know how to handle it really.
Tim, let me ask you about our batting. I think we saw 2 different types. Saro made his debut. We're happy about that. We're really excited. On day 1 of test 1, we didn't want to bet Hamza. We wanted Ryan Rickleton. There were so many questions about that batting lineup and all the drama. But at the end of the day, how would you characterize our batting throughout the entire series? As well as, are there any people who you had questions about that you still have questions about now? And I'll start. Aiden still has a question mark over him. He's the only one in that batting lineup. I think Carl Verena answered all my questions in that with that 100. Even though his technique's still wonky, we've seen wonky techniques work, and that kind of worked in that day. Even though I kind of felt like New Zealand were being very generous bowling short bowling wide and not bowling on the top of off, because if you do that, he finds himself in trouble. But Tim, our batting, how was that? How did you find it? Who still is on the hot seat?
Well, yeah, we've already discussed the first test, and that was as bad as it can get. I'm with you. It's time to say thanks, Markham. You need to go back to first class cricket and make sizable runs, not just averaging 40, proper runs. So he needs to.
He scored 800 in the last season. 800 runs in 8 games.
Yeah.
Last season. It was actually 900, by the way. It was 80 away from 1,000 runs.
He needs to do that again. That's it.
Okay.
The one issue that I do have, and the one issue I do have, and I do worry about it, particularly when Cricket South Africa does not have a great history with communication. I just hope that the communication with Ryan Rickleton is a solid one, that he knows where he is, and he knows that he's close to selection, that there isn't muddle thinking, particularly with the guys now going to the IPL for the Bangladeshis. Ryan Rickleton has to play against Bangladesh. Yes. He absolutely has to play against Bangladesh. That is a certainty. Carver Raider played exceptionally well, yes. The large parts of the innings, New Zealand gave him what he wanted, but you can only do what you play up against. 136 is nothing to be sniffed about.
Yes.
Saul Irvia, fantastic 100. Because there's just a slight thing now. You don't want 100, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, 9, 11, 100.
100. That's Aiden Markham. That's Aiden Markham right there.
That's what you don't want. And that's where he is at the moment. That's, he's had 3 failures and 100. So that's that. Just a one to keep an eye on.
How long do you give him? How long do you give him? Do you take him to England as your opener?
Oh, yeah. No, you take him to England. No.
So that means Aiden is not going to be playing in England. He'll probably be on the bench.
Aiden is the bench. Aiden is, for me, I'm telling Aiden, you're a reserve batsman. I'm telling him right now, you are a reserve batsman. Whatever you do in the next 2 months.
Big calls here. Big calls here on the Full Quota podcast.
You are.
Adam, what do you think about batting? When you look at it, obviously, it's nice to hear an outsider's perspective of what you thought of how we handled and who the guys you thought we should take forward.
I'm going to talk about Aiden Markham because I think he's a really interesting one because his form in T20 cricket over the last year has been great. And I was thinking about Johnny Bairstow when I was thinking about Aiden Markham a little bit. How Johnny Bairstow at one point was a really, really good test batsman who suddenly his white ball form exploded and then his test cricket kind of fell away a little bit. Obviously got 100 in Australia, which was great. But, he's never kind of reached those heights again. And I kind of thought about Aiden Markham. And I know Aiden Markham hasn't quite hit the white ball levels of Johnny Bairstow. I know South African fans probably hope that he does over the next 18 months. But I wonder whether there is kind of like a little bit of a bit of symmetry there with his form kind of in kind of short ball cricket versus now in test cricket. Because even in the second innings, he didn't look like he knew what he was doing. Like he was on zero for a long, long, long time. He didn't know whether he wanted that out, whether he wanted to play strokes, whether he was playing defensive. I mean, he was rock solid in defence, but there was no kind of sign of him wanting to get to maneuver the strike. So I'm wondering whether he's kind of just got into that kind of mode at the moment. And I think that's probably a thing with Aiden Markham. We all know his ability, his record from over the last 4 or 5 years has been incredible. He's one of the most talented batsmen going around in South African cricket, even in world cricket. I think he kind of he's lost his way a little bit. And I wonder whether it's more around his approach at the moment. Obviously, there's a few technical things as well, but he just doesn't seem to know how to really start off and construct an innings. And even we saw in the first innings, got a nice 40 odd, but then he just played an aggressive shot and got out. I thought that was a time for him to really step up and get a big score. I actually am a massive fan of him, and it's quite funny when you're a fan of overseas players and you've watched them play against your own team. Hey, there's this party that kind of roots for them as well because you think you want to see them succeed. And I've always been in a Markham camp, so I hope that he kind of finds his form against England. That would be great. Irvia obviously batted great. What an innings by him. He really took it to the New Zealand bowlers on that first day and kind of set the tone. Got out at probably a time that could have given the initiative back to New Zealand, but I think he looks like a solid prospect. Rassie Vanderdussen, again, when you look at how good a player he is in one-day cricket, and now he hasn't. Again, his approach in Test cricket doesn't quite seem to be consistent. He's a good player, you can see it, but then gets out at wrong times. Verena, I mean, what an innings he played. Under all sorts of pressure, that was massive. I did think that Rabada played for me a bit of a game-changing innings because he kind of turned that. He came in and he played with just no fear. We talk about how well he bowled in that Test match, but his fielding was great. That catch of Jameson that went miles in the air and he just took it comfortably. Didn't even look like dropping it. His 47, he came out and he took the attack to the New Zealand bowlers. And that swung the game in favour of South Africa. It kind of gave South Africa, hey, we can win this game. 3 and would have been a different story.
Yes, and that's that period after lunch with him and Verena, it was actually Kagiso alone because Verena was on the other end and he was still like chilling, like I don't know what score it was like maybe 90, and Kagiso was just going at him and sixes and fours, and I think we can, Tim, and I'm going to ask you this. I think with those three, Keshav, Kagiso, and Marco, if one of them hits, that gives the balance of the side a lot much better than necessarily trying to put Vian Mulder in there at 7. And you can work with those three, and it's one of those three who's going to come good. One of them has to come good. It's kind of like that India formula where they used to have like Jadeja at 7, and then they'd have and Jadeja was always good. And then when they played at home, it was Jadeja, Ravi Ashwin, and one of the two was either going to score runs. But Rassie Vanderdussen, Tim, to you, a lot of people are crying for him to go back. They think he's not the type of guy we need in the side. What do you make of Rassie and in Test cricket? And is it time to move away from him? I know he's 32. I'm turning 32 this year. I don't think you should throw people away at 32. But if South African cricket fans want him thrown away, what do you say to that?
It's a tricky one. This is a tricky one. And I think Adam says it about right. He's done okay. He's done okay. Nothing more than that. I've been concerned about him in this format for about 12 months. And I've been sort of in between. Because outside of Ryan Rickleton, there's nobody that is going, pick me, pick me, pick me. There's nobody that is putting their name forward 100%. But it's certainly one I would keep an eye on. And certainly one I would keep an eye on because it is a little bit of a concern. Averaging early 30s. He's not scoring the runs that we need. So we are still relying too much on the Dean at the top to blunt the attack and score runs, where we need more runs from people like him. So it's no, I wouldn't drop him. I'd be playing him against Bangladesh, but it's certainly one I would keep an eye on.
Yes. To close off this podcast, guys, Adam, where does New Zealand go from here? Literally, which country in the world do they go to? But from a team perspective in the Test arena, World Test Championship points are looking a little bit bleak because you've now split series between South Africa and India and South Africa and Bangladesh that I think you should have won. But where does this team go from here?
I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching about positions in the New Zealand batting lineup. I think that's for certain. I mean, I think, we discussed in the second innings, in the second Test match, the New Zealand batting lineup looked really thin at times. I mean, albeit against a really good bowling lineup, we need to acknowledge how good South Africa are, how good Rabada is, and he's made a lot of great batsmen throughout the world look like bunnies. So, from that perspective, sure, South Africa have bowled extremely well, but I think New Zealand showed a lot of vulnerability that they haven't shown in the last few years. And I think the one guy for me that New Zealand miss a lot, short's Kane Williamson, and he's an incredible generational batsman, one of the greatest batsmen of this generation. But it's BJ Watland. because he was always someone that would always fight with the tail, and he always gave confidence to the tail. I think they're missing his steel in there. New Zealand doesn't quite seem to have that kind of solidity in the lineup. And I think Ross Taylor, I think I mentioned in our preview podcast that though he's not, or he wasn't in great form prior to retiring, it's still Ross Taylor, and he adds a lot to the dressing room. And I think New Zealand now are going to have to look at the side and go, well, is this the best batting lineup we can have going forward? And I think even in terms of going forward on being able to play on different pitches, because we've seen this New Zealand side beaten in India pretty comprehensively in the second test. Narrowly avoided defeat in the first test over there. Played against Bangladesh on a featherbed pitch, and got beaten by maybe the biggest upset in the history of Test cricket. I would have thought, considering Bangladesh were humbled at home against Pakistan. South Africa now beating them at home in a series that we probably on paper think we should have beaten you guys. I mean, it's not the greatest South African side of all time. It's obviously these quality players, and you guys are rebuilding a lot. But it's not the AB de Villiers. It's not Hashim Amla. It's not Fafu Plessis.
It's not the team that came in 2017.
No. It's not Philander, Stain, Morkel. I mean, if I missed anybody else out? So there's even like guys that not only South African greats, but some of the greatest cricketers that the world's ever seen. So this is touted as one of New Zealand's best sides, arguably, obviously, with a couple of players that weren't in the WTC. But I think from a New Zealand perspective, I think there's going to be a lot of looks over the shoulder now, because it's going to be hard for New Zealand to make the World Test Championship now. I mean, 50% record at home. You've got to go to England. I think New Zealand should compete with England over there. England are a bit of a rabble at the moment as well with their Test team. Come back. I think we've got Sri Lanka. Can't remember who's the next. I think we play Pakistan actually in Christmas. So, yeah, I think New Zealand's going to have to look at the balance of the team as well. A few guys getting a little bit older. So Neil Wagner bowled really well. He's in his coming up mid-30s. You've got Salvies, 32, 33. Bolt's been out injured. Jameson had a bit of a poor series by his standards, which he said early on in his career. So, yeah, I think from a New Zealand perspective, I think trying to construct a team that's suited to the conditions that they face is going to be the objective.
Tim, I remember I was chatting to you earlier before we started about it feels to me like it's an opportunity lost because we start these test series so badly. And I don't want to use the MIQ as an excuse because you knew this was going to happen. It's not like it sprung on you. You could have prepared, you could have left earlier, you could have done many things. And this reminds me of the World Cup when you had weak Australia on the ropes and you just throw it all away. And I know we find a way to get these, get ourselves out of jail, but in a respectable manner, getting knocked out of the World Cup on net run rate or drawing a series against New Zealand with a massive, massive performance. I'm not happy about that. I think this team is playing at a level just below they are. They're actually better than they are. And it was an opportunity to whitewash the New Zealand side at home, and they just couldn't do it. Where do you stand with this team, and where do you see this team going forward?
The slow starts have been happening with 3 different coaches. So I'm not actually sure what the issue is, but it is certainly an issue. We've had it for 4 years now, 3-4 years. The side itself, I don't think it's a rebuilding phase. I get that narrative, but I don't get.
They're better than they actually are.
Yeah, I don't think they are. They've been around for a long time. If you look at the individuals themselves, from people like Rabada, very young, but he's been around for 5-6 years. What the problem is, and it has been, again, the same for the last 4 years, is the batting. Batting on a consistent basis. And for me, it's predominantly, we are not picking the right 11. We are picking 11s and saying, right, that's the 5 bowlers, that's going to win us the game. That's what we've done. With every single team, that's what we've done. Even with this one, we said Maharaj is going to have an effect on this test match. He's going to get wickets, and he did. He got wickets. He got very important wickets. My issue is the batting as a whole. Still issues with consistency at the top of the order. It's brand new opening pair, so you've got to give them time. Rusty had very important innings against the Indian series, but hasn't kicked on. You thought those 40s that he scored, which were vital, you thought he would kick on. We missed
Timber as well.
Timber as well. He's had a good 12 months, not a great series. Right? By his standards over the last 11 months, it was a problem. It's missing a quality batter in that 11. That's what it's missing.
Well, the quality batter doesn't want to score runs. Like, that's the problem. Aiden Markram's the quality batter. He does not want to score runs. Like, I'm sorry.
And
I can't carry a guy with so much talent. And just like, okay. But here's the thing. Bangladesh series, players are away at the IPL because our cricket board is our cricket board. What do we do in the Bangladesh series? Because it evens it out. I think it evens it out, Tim. Where do we go?
I was in commentary and people were asking me the teams and things. That didn't even cross my mind. The IPL did not even cross my mind. It clearly should have crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But it didn't. So I've sort of written down names of the 11 and I can see where they're going to go. We're going to probably have 3 spinners at the squad because it's going to be in Coastal. So George will come in. Then I've got issues again. Hamza was
he was underwhelming.
Keegan is crucial. Keegan is crucial. Keegan is the informed guy. He's scoring runs. Okay, not so much for the Dolphins domestically now, but in the longer format, he's scoring runs. He's in form. He could be the key. But there's issues. Rusty's not scoring runs on a consistent basis. Hamza, I'm not convinced about. Saul Irvin is brand new. I don't want to see Vern Mulder in the 11. He's not scoring enough. He doesn't justify himself.
But Mark Jansen's gone. Mark Jansen will be gone to the IPL.
I know, but even that's going to... I would rather have George Linder than Vern Mulder. You're playing in Coastal, put in George. So,
okay.
Or put in Harmer.
We're not there yet.
Harmer and Maharaj together. Bring it on.
Adam, do you have a final question for us as we close off?
What was I about to ask? I completely forgot what I was about to say now. So obviously, against you guys have just mentioned you're playing against Bangladesh. Who do you think will be like the bowling lineup? I know the batting lineup should be pretty similar. I mean, Dean Elgar. I'm not sure whether Markram's in the IPL. Kevin Peterson probably comes back. Bavuma, I think, will be there as well. So, any big names you think will come into the team?
I think the guys you've seen. So, Duan Olivier will be definitely in. You'll probably see Lutosu Pamela in there, sharing the new ball with Duan, similar to what they did at the Lions. There's an opportunity for Glenton Steenman to get a lot more game time in conditions that are familiar to him. He plays in Quebec and on the coast, so that's going to be really nice to see. There's some other youngsters coming through like Othniel Bartman who could get an opportunity. He's very quick. I love him. He's very quick. So I think for me, that's where we're going to be looking towards.
And looking at your one-day side at the moment, you guys must be quite a bit excited about the one-day World Cup in a year and a half, because I feel like South Africa have kind of turned the corner there, in terms of some exciting young talent.
Quietly confident. That's my answer. Quietly confident. I've seen this team throw things away, so I'm quietly confident. I don't think this team can. I think the India series was one thing, but I do think going forward, I think when they play other teams from around the world, they might miss out on a lot, especially from the batting perspective. Really worried about that. I think bowling sorts itself out. Batting at times, you could get some really interesting situations. Tim?
Do you think QDK will ever come back into the test arena again?
If there's a change in coach, I think so.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think if there's a change in coach, he might come back. I'm just thinking because someone new might just go to him and give him what he wants.
I wondered whether he'd retire from Test cricket just due to, obviously he had a newborn child. I think was it around the second Test and also COVID and everything. I wondered whether that might have been a reason he dropped out of Test cricket. Because it was kind of a strange decision to retire when he did. Maybe want to spend more time with family.
I think that definitely played a part. I think he's one of the guys in that squad that really did not like the biobubble lifestyle. He really didn't like it. Prior to his retirement, he even asked for a break, and he was given a break, and he went out fishing. He just needed to switch off completely. I do think it affected him. Hotel to hotel, locked up, not going. I think it definitely affected him. Whereas other individuals didn't. It affected them, but not as extremely, not as to an extreme as it did Quinton.
Yeah,
because it is kind of strange. You wonder whether maybe has he just lost his love of Test cricket? Because his Test cricket form over the last year or two has been really, really good. Yeah. I think of the series in the West Indies, and I know Vereina's had an incredible Test against New Zealand, but you had Quinton de Kock into the mix there. Wow, it adds just another extra dimension, not just as a keeper, but as a batsman as well. He averages over 40. So, from a fan perspective, I'd love to see him play again.
Look, I don't think the door's entirely too closed on Quinton, but obviously it's going to be up to him. And I think if the environment changes, if things change in and around the team or the bio-bubble situation, he might want to come back. And so hopefully we can get that, because he was one of the keys in opening up games for South Africa, especially tight games over the past 5 years. Adam, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. Please do come through next time we have New Zealand or we play with New Zealand, but we really appreciated your time with us.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. Hopefully we actually get a series in South Africa, and isn't it a shame we don't have anything to talk about? We've never beaten you guys in South Africa. Actually, we've never beaten you guys in a Test series at all. So thanks for having me, guys. Much appreciated.
Sure. Cool. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thanks very much, guys.
Yes. Tim, thank you very much, my good friend. We've got World Cup preview coming up tomorrow for the South African women's team. The Women's World Cup starts tomorrow, but they play on Friday. So we're going to be Saturday. We're going to be talking about all of that as well. So Tim, thank you very much, my friend. To everybody who's listening, remember you can subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the outside. Goodbye, good night, and lesale kakahiso.